My wife came home from her Zumba retreat, glowing with satisfaction, until she saw who was drinking coffee in our living room. The woman she destroyed 35 years ago was back, and this time she brought evidence. What happened next exposed a web of lies, murder plots, and stolen lives. My name is Vernon Hopkins. I'm 67 years old, and up until last Tuesday, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. Retired 3 years ago from Commonwealth Edison, where I spent most of my adult life making sure Chicago didn't go dark. Good pension, nice house in Oak Park, and what I believe was a solid marriage to Marlene. Marlene's 57, still looks good for her age. She's always been into fitness, yoga, Pilates, whatever the latest trend was. About 2 years ago, she discovered Zumba. It's so liberating, Vernon, she'd say, bouncing around the kitchen after her evening classes. The music just takes you to another place. I supported it. Hell, I encouraged it. After 32 years of marriage, I figured she deserved to have some fun. When she started talking about weekend intensives and retreats, I nodded along. You go enjoy yourself, honey. You've earned it. The first retreat was in Wisconsin. She came back glowing, full of stories about new friends and breakthrough moments. The second one was in Michigan, then Indiana. Always different states, always with her Zumba sisters, as she called them. Always coming home with that same satisfied smile. But here's the thing about working in power distribution. You develop an eye for patterns. You notice when the load doesn't match the demand. You start paying attention to irregularities, even small ones. Like how she never brought home any photos from these retreats. Like how her phone was suddenly password protected. Like how she started doing laundry immediately after every trip, even though she claimed they had spa services. 3 months ago, I started keeping a notebook. Just dates and details, nothing fancy. Call it old habits from the control room, where we logged everything. October 15th, left for a Zumba retreat in Nashville. October 18th, returned, claimed they did outdoor sessions in the rain, but her shoes were clean. November 8th, Detroit retreat, said they stayed at a rustic lodge, but she came back with hotel soap and shampoo from Marriott. Last week, I hired a private investigator, Danny Sullivan, retired cop who does discreet work for folks like me. Cost me $1,500, but some truths are worth paying for. What he found changed everything. My wife wasn't going to Zumba retreats. She was going to hotels with a 42-year-old real estate agent named Trevor Hayes. Same man, same routine, different cities every time. So this morning, when Marlene texted that she was driving home early from her intensive weekend in Milwaukee, I made some coffee and waited. But I wasn't waiting alone. The call I made at 6:30 that morning wasn't to Danny Sullivan. It was to Rita Blackwood, the woman I should have married 35 years ago. Rita answered on the second ring. Her voice was the same, steady, warm, with that slight rasp that used to drive me crazy back when we worked together at Commonwealth Edison. Vernon, she said. It's been a long time. Too long, I replied. Rita, I need to ask you something, and it's going to sound strange. Try me. I took a breath. Do you remember why we broke up? I mean, the real reason. Silence stretched between us. Then Rita spoke, her voice careful. You mean besides the fact that you suddenly went cold on me and started dating Marlene 2 weeks later? That's not how it happened, I said, though even as I spoke, I realized maybe it was how it looked to her. Vernon, you stopped calling. Stop coming by. When I asked what was wrong, you said you needed space. Then I heard through the grapevine that you were taking Marlene to the company Christmas party. I rubbed my forehead. Rita, I got a letter. Anonymous. It said you were seeing someone else, that you were just using me as a backup plan. What? Her voice sharpened. Vernon, there was never anyone else. Not until you disappeared from my life. The pieces started falling into place. The letter was on company stationery. Typewritten. Said you were laughing about me with your girlfriends. Jesus, Rita whispered. Vernon, I never. Who would do something like that? I already knew. Deep in my gut, I knew. Someone who wanted you out of the picture. We talked for another 20 minutes. Rita told me about the strange phone call she'd received that same month. A woman's voice, claiming to be from HR, asking personal questions about our relationship. About the flat tire that appeared on her car 3 mornings in a row. About feeling like someone was watching her. I thought I was being paranoid, Rita said. But looking back, Rita, I interrupted. Marlene's coming home this morning. I have proof of what she's been doing. But I need to know, Would you be willing to help me settle an old score? What kind of help? The kind where you sit in my living room and drink coffee while I wait for my cheating wife to walk through the front door. Rita was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed, not bitter, just amazed. Vernon Hopkins, are you asking me to be part of some elaborate confrontation? I'm asking you to help me get back something that was stolen from both of us 35 years ago. What time should I be there? I looked at the clock. Marlene would be home by 9:30. 8:45. Park around the corner. I'll leave the back door unlocked. Vernon, yeah. I hope you know what you're doing. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about all the years I'd wondered what might have been. Rita and I had been good together. We understood each other's work, shared the same dry sense of humor, had the same values. When she suddenly became distant and then cut me off completely, it had nearly destroyed me. Marlene had been there to pick up the pieces. Sympathetic, available, eager to help me forget. She'd been so understanding about my heartbreak, so supportive during those first difficult months. Now I understood why. I made a fresh pot of coffee and set out 3 mugs. By 9:30, this whole mess would be over, one way or another. Rita arrived at 8:47, looking almost exactly like I remembered. A little grayer, a few more lines around her eyes, but still the woman who used to make my heart skip beats when she walked into the control room. Your house is nice, she said, accepting the coffee I offered her. Marlene picked most of it, I replied. I was never much for decorating. Rita nodded, settling into the armchair, facing the front window. So what's the plan here, Vernon? I sit quietly while you confront your wife. Something like that. I pulled out the folder Danny Sullivan had given me. But first, I want you to see what kind of woman we're dealing with. I handed her the photographs. Rita's expression shifted as she looked through them. Trevor Hayes kissing my wife in a hotel parking garage. The two of them entering room 412 at Marion, Detroit. Marlene laughing at something he whispered in her ear. How long? Rita asked. At least 14 months. Probably longer. Rita set the photos aside. Vernon, I need to know something. Are you doing this for revenge or for closure? Both, I said honestly. She stole 35 years from us, Rita. Not just our relationship, but the possibility of one. I want her to understand the full scope of what she's done. Rita studied my face. And what about us? What happens after this morning? I don't know, I admitted, but I'd like to find out. At 9:15, I heard Marlene's car in the driveway. She's here, I said. You ready for this? Rita straightened in her chair. As ready as I'll ever be. I positioned myself in the kitchen where I could see both the front door and the living room. Through the window, I watched Marlene gather her bags from the trunk. She looked tired but satisfied, probably still riding the high from her weekend with Trevor. She had no idea her world was about to collapse. Marlene came through the front door like she owned the world. She was practically glowing, that post-retreat radiance she always wore after her weekend escapades. Her Zumba bag was slung over her shoulder, and she was humming something under her breath. Vernon, honey, I'm home, she called out, dropping her weekend bag by the entrance. The retreat was incredible. You should have seen the moves we learned. She walked toward the kitchen, still humming, still smiling that satisfied smile. I know I said I'd be back this evening, but we finished early and I missed you. I didn't respond. I just stood there, coffee mug in hand, watching her performance. You're up early, Marlene said, noticing me by the counter. Did you miss me that much? Something like that. I replied evenly. She moved toward me, probably planning her usual welcome home kiss, when she heard it. The soft clink of a coffee cup being set down on the glass table in the living room. Marlene stopped mid-step. Her humming died. The smile faltered just slightly. Did you leave the TV on? She asked, her voice still light but with a new edge. Nope. She tilted her head, listening. Another sound, the rustle of paper, someone turning a page. Are you expecting someone? Marlene asked. Her shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. I am, I said calmly. That's when her smile really started to fade. Not all at once, but like a light dimming slowly. She looked at me with new eyes, searching my face for clues. Who is it? She asked. Why don't you go see for yourself? Marlene hesitated. For 32 years, she'd been the one in control, the one who managed situations and people to her advantage. But standing there in our entryway, something in my tone told her that the rules had changed. She walked slowly toward the living room, her confident stride becoming more cautious with each step. I followed at a distance, wanting to see her face when she discovered who was waiting. Marlene rounded the corner and stopped dead. There was Rita, sitting calmly in the armchair, coffee cup in hand, looking like she belonged there. The smile that had carried my wife through the front door vanished completely. Her face went pale, then flushed red. The weekend bag slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a dull thud. "You," she whispered. Rita looked up from the magazine she'd been reading. "Hello, Marlene. It's been a long time." Marlene spun around to face me, her eyes wide with something between rage and panic. "Vernon, what is this?" "This," I said, stepping into the room, "is a conversation that's 35 years overdue." Marlene tried to regain control the way she always did, with deflection and charm. She forced a laugh, bright and artificial. "Well, this is unexpected," she said, smoothing down her hair. "Rita, what brings you by after all these years?" "Vernon called me," Rita replied simply. "We had some things to discuss about the past." Marlene's eyes darted between us. "The past? That's ancient history. We've all moved on." "Have we?" I asked, pulling out the manila envelope I'd been saving. "Because I've been doing some research about that ancient history." I handed Marlene the first document, a copy of the anonymous letter that had destroyed my relationship with Rita, the letter that had driven me straight into Marlene's waiting arms. Marlene glanced at it, her expression carefully neutral. "I don't understand what this has to do with anything." "Look at the letterhead," I said. "Commonwealth Edison Stationery. Typed on an IBM Selectric typewriter. The same model they had in the administrative office where you worked. Lots of people had access to that typewriter, Vernon." Rita leaned forward. "Tell him about the phone calls, Marlene. The woman who claimed to be from HR, asking about our relationship." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Strange thing," I continued, pulling out another document. "I had a handwriting expert compare that anonymous letter to your old employee records. Want to guess what he found?" Marlene's confident facade began to slip. "This is ridiculous. You're both living in the past." "Actually, we're living in the present," I said, handing her the next folder. "Take a look at these." The photographs hit the coffee table like grenades. Marlene and Trevor Hayes. Multiple hotels. Multiple cities. Multiple lies. Marlene stared at the images, her face cycling through emotions: shock, anger, calculation. "You had me follow. I had my cheating wife investigated. There's a difference." "Vernon, I can explain." "Can you explain this?" I interrupted, pulling out my phone. I played the voicemail Trevor had left me yesterday, the one where he apologized for the affair and revealed that Marlene had told him I was abusive and that she was planning to leave me anyway. "That creep," Marlene whispered. "Interesting choice of words," Rita observed. "Most wives would be more concerned about their husband's feelings than their lover's betrayal." Marlene's mask finally shattered. "You self-righteous witch. You think you know everything, don't you?" "I know enough," Rita said calmly. "I know you destroyed our relationship 35 years ago because you wanted Vernon for yourself. I know you've been systematically lying to him for over a year. And I know about the life insurance policy." Marlene went white. "What life insurance policy?" I smiled grimly. "The one you took out on me 6 months ago. $2 million, double indemnity, for accidental death. Danny Sullivan is very thorough in his investigations." That's just good financial planning." "Is it?" I asked. "Because according to the application, my health history includes several conditions I don't actually have. Heart problems, diabetes, high blood pressure. Strange how those appeared right around the time you started your retreat schedule with Trevor." Marlene looked around the room like a trapped animal. "You're both insane. This is harassment." "No," I said, standing up. "This is justice. And we're just getting started." The sound of a car door slamming outside made all three of us freeze. I wasn't expecting anyone else, and from Marlene's expression, neither was she. "Are you expecting someone else?" Rita asked. Before I could answer, the front door burst open. Our daughter Bethany stood in the doorway, her face flushed with anger and determination. "Don't you dare lie to him anymore," Bethany shouted, pointing directly at her mother. Marlene's face went ashen. "Bethany, what are you doing here?" "Dad called me last night," Bethany said, stepping into the room. "He told me what he discovered." Finally, I echoed. Bethany turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. Dad, I've known about Mom's affairs for over 2 years. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without destroying our family. The room went dead silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. 2 years. I managed. I saw her with that real estate guy at a restaurant in Chicago, Bethany explained. When I confronted her, she begged me not to tell you. Said she was going through a midlife crisis and would end it soon. Marlene found her voice. Bethany, you promised. I promised to keep quiet while you got your act together. Bethany snapped. Instead, you kept lying, kept cheating, kept making a fool of Dad. Rita reached over and squeezed my hand. The gesture was small, but it anchored me. There's more, isn't there? I asked Bethany. My daughter nodded reluctantly. Trevor Hayes isn't the first one, Dad. There was someone else before him. A guy named Michael Patterson. And before that, someone from her gym. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. I sank into my chair, tried to process the scope of my wife's deception. How many? I asked quietly. At least 4 that I know of, Bethany said. Maybe more. Marlene finally exploded. You little brat. How dare you spy on me? How dare I? Bethany shot back. How dare you cheat on the best man I know? How dare you lie to his face every single day? That's enough, I said, my voice cutting through their shouting. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years. Marlene, I want you out of this house. Now. Vernon, please. Now. I repeated. Take whatever you can carry. Everything else can be sorted out through lawyers. Marlene looked around the room, at Rita's satisfied expression, at Bethany's disgusted face, at my cold stare. Finally, she seemed to understand that this wasn't a negotiation. Fine, she said, her voice venomous. But don't think this is over. I'll take you for everything you're worth in the divorce. Actually, I said, pulling out one final document, you won't. This house is in my name only. The retirement accounts have been transferred. And thanks to your insurance fraud attempt, you'll be lucky if you don't end up in prison. Marlene's face twisted with rage and desperation. For a moment, I thought she might physically attack one of us. Instead, she turned and stormed toward the stairs. 30 minutes, I called after her. Then the locks get changed. While Marlene was upstairs throwing things into suitcases and cursing loud enough for the neighbors to hear, I pulled out the thickest folder from my collection. Rita and Bethany watched as I spread documents across the coffee table like a general planning a final assault. There's more, isn't there? Rita asked. Oh, there's much more, I replied grimly. Bethany, remember when your mother inherited that property from her aunt in Florida 2 years ago? My daughter nodded. She said it was just some old house that needed too much work to be worth keeping. She lied. I handed Bethany a real estate listing. Your mother didn't inherit one property. She inherited 3. A beachfront condo in Tampa, a rental duplex in Orlando, and 40 acres of undeveloped land outside Jacksonville. Bethany's eyes widened as she read. Dad, this says the combined value is over $800,000. It gets better, I continued. She never sold those properties. She's been renting them out through a property management company. The rental income goes into an account I never knew existed. Rita leaned forward to examine the bank statements. Vernon, this shows deposits of almost $4,000 a month for the past 2 years. Money she's been using to fund her affairs, I said. Hotel rooms, gifts for her lovers, even a car she bought for Trevor Hayes. A car? Bethany asked. I pulled out another document. A brand new BMW convertible. $48,000. Paid for with her secret rental income and registered in both their names. The sound of Marlene's footsteps on the stairs made us all look up. She appeared in the living room doorway, dragging 2 large suitcases and looking like she'd aged 10 years in the past hour. I'm ready to go, she announced, her voice brittle with forced dignity. Not quite yet, I said. We need to discuss your business ventures. Marlene's face went white. What business ventures? I gestured to the documents spread across the table. Your Florida real estate empire. The secret bank account. The car you bought for your boyfriend. Those properties are mine. My aunt left them to me. Actually, I said, pulling out another file. Those properties were acquired during our marriage using funds from our joint savings account. That makes the marital assets subject to division. Marlene's lawyer bravado collapsed. You can't touch those properties. I already have, I replied calmly. I filed a restraining order yesterday freezing all assets related to those properties until our divorce is finalized. You bastard, Marlene hissed. Careful, Rita said quietly. There are witnesses present. Marlene turned on Rita with pure venom. This is all your fault. If you hadn't come back, Vernon and I could have worked this out. Worked what out? Rita asked. Your next affair? Your next lie? Your plan to murder him for the insurance money? I never planned to murder anyone. Maybe not murder, I said, but you certainly planned my demise. Tell us about the emergency contact changes you made on my medical records, Marlene. The ones that list you as having power of attorney during any medical crisis. Marlene's silence was answer enough. Or the new will you had drawn up last month, I continued. The one leaving everything to you, including properties you claimed not to own. Bethany stared at her mother in horror. Mom, you were planning to let Dad die. It wasn't like that, Marlene said desperately. I just wanted to be prepared for any emergency. The only emergency you were preparing for, I said, standing up, was getting caught. Now get out of my house. As Marlene dragged her suitcases toward the front door, a police cruiser pulled into our driveway. Marlene stopped, her face cycling through confusion and fear. Expecting company? Rita asked. Actually, yes, I replied, walking to the window. That's Officer Mike Stevens, Marlene's brother. Bethany groaned. Oh great. Uncle Mike to the rescue. Mike Stevens climbed out of his patrol car and strode toward our front door like he owned the place. 6'2", 250 pounds of muscle and bad attitude. He'd been using his badge to intimidate people for 20 years, and apparently thought today would be no different. Vernon, he called out, not bothering to knock. What the hell is going on here? Marlene called me crying, saying you're throwing her out of her own home. It's not her home, I replied evenly. The deed is in my name only. Always has been. Mike pushed past Marlene and stepped into the living room, his hand resting on his service weapon in a gesture meant to intimidate. When he saw Rita, his expression darkened further. So this is what this is about, he said. You're throwing away 32 years of marriage for some old flame. I'm ending 32 years of lies and betrayal. I corrected. Your sister has been cheating on me for years, Mike. Multiple affairs, financial fraud, insurance fraud. The works. That's garbage. Mike growled, stepping closer to me. Marlene would never. Uncle Mike, Bethany interrupted. She's been lying to all of us. I have photographs, bank records, everything. Mike ignored his niece and focused on me. Vernon, I'm going to give you one chance to make this right. Let Marlene stay in her home, and we can all forget this little misunderstanding. Is that a threat, Officer Stevens? Rita asked quietly. Mike turned to her, his face flushing red. Lady, you need to mind your own business. Actually, I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, Rita is my business. And so is this. I pulled out a small digital recorder and set on the coffee table. Mike's eyes narrowed. What's that? A recording of the conversation I had with Captain Rodriguez at your precinct yesterday. I replied. We discussed your gambling debts, your off-duty security work for some questionable businesses, and the internal affairs investigation that's been building against you for the past 6 months. The color drained from Mike's face. You're bluffing. Am I? I pressed play on the recorder. Captain Rodriguez's voice filled the room, discussing Mike's pattern of intimidation, his abuse of police resources, and the evidence they'd gathered about his involvement with illegal gambling operations. You see, Mike, I continued, when you spend 43 years working with electrical systems, you learn the importance of having backup power. I knew eventually you'd try to use your badge to protect your sister, so I made sure I had some insurance. Mike's hand moved away from his weapon. This is entrapment. No, this is consequences, I said firmly. Your sister is a lying, cheating fraud. You're a corrupt cop. And both of you are about to learn what happens when honest people fight back. Marlene finally found her voice. Mike, do something. Mike looked around the room, at the evidence spread across the table, at Bethany's disgusted expression, at Rita's satisfied smile, at my unwavering stare. For the first time in years, he seemed to realize his intimidation tactics weren't going to work. Come on, Marlene, he said quietly. Let's go. That's it. Marlene shrieked. You're just going to let him destroy me? He's not destroying you. Mike replied wearily. You destroyed yourself. As I walked toward the door, I called out one last time. Mike, Tell Captain Rodriguez I'll be happy to testify if Internal Affairs needs my statement. The front door slammed behind them, and for the first time in months, my house felt peaceful. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office across from Marlene and her attorney, finalizing the divorce settlement. The woman who had once controlled every aspect of our household now looked like a shadow of herself. Designer clothes replaced by discount store outfits. Professional hair styling replaced by a home dye job that had gone slightly wrong. My client is prepared to accept the proposed division of assets, her lawyer said reluctantly, with the exception of the Florida properties. Those properties are off the table, my attorney replied firmly. They were purchased with marital funds, and the rental income was hidden from Mr. Hopkins. Mrs. Hopkins is lucky she's not facing criminal charges. Marlene finally spoke up. Vernon, please. Those properties are all I have left. You should have thought about that before you try to have me killed, I said evenly. Her lawyer looked confused. Killed? Mr. Hopkins, that's a serious accusation. I pulled out a manila folder. Trevor Hayes contacted the FBI last week. Apparently, your client offered him $50,000 to arrange an accident for me. He's cooperating fully with federal investigators in exchange for immunity. Marlene's face went white. He's lying. He has recordings, Marlene. Voice recordings of you discussing the best way to make my death look accidental. Something about a fall down the stairs or a gas leak. Her lawyer set down his pen. I think I need to speak with my client privately. Actually, I said, I think we're done here. Marlene can sign the papers as written, or she can explain to a federal jury why she was plotting to murder her husband for insurance money. 30 minutes later, Marlene signed everything. The house, the retirement accounts, the Florida properties, all of it stayed with me. She walked away with her personal belongings and whatever money she had hidden in her secret accounts. This isn't over, Vernon, she said as we left the lawyer's office. Yes, it is, I replied. And Marlene, stay away from Rita, stay away from Bethany, and stay away from me. The FBI is still building their case against you. As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete peace. The woman who had manipulated and controlled my life for 3 decades was finally gone, and the future was mine to write. Rita was waiting for me at home, having spent the morning rearranging our bedroom furniture. Our bedroom. It still felt strange to think of it that way, but we were taking things slowly, rebuilding what had been stolen from us. How did it go? She asked. It's over, I said, pulling her into my arms. All of it. We're free. For the first time in 35 years, I kissed the woman I was supposed to have married. It felt like coming home. 1 year later, Rita and I were standing on the beach in Florida, watching the sunset from the deck of what used to be Marlene's rental property. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. We were building our new life on the foundation of her deception. Any regrets? Rita asked, sliding her arm around my waist. About the divorce? None, I replied. About waiting 35 years to have this conversation? Every day. Bethany joined us on the deck, carrying her 6-month-old son, my first grandchild. She named him Vernon Jr., which still made me emotional every time I heard it. Mom called again today, Bethany said. She wants to know if she can visit for the baby's baptism. What did you tell her? The same thing I've told her every time she calls. No. She made her choices, Dad. We all have to live with the consequences. Marlene had been arrested 3 months after our divorce was finalized. The FBI's investigation had uncovered not just the murder-for-hire plot, but also a sophisticated insurance fraud scheme involving fake medical records and forged documents. She was currently serving a 5-year sentence in federal prison. Trevor Hayes had received immunity in exchange for his testimony, but his real estate license had been revoked and his wife had taken him for everything in their divorce. Last I heard, he was working as a car salesman in Toledo. Mike Stevens had been forced into early retirement after the internal affairs investigation confirmed his gambling debts and abuse of police resources. He'd moved to Arizona, presumably to start over where nobody knew about his disgrace. Any word on the wedding plans? Bethany asked. Rita and I looked at each other and smiled. We'd gotten engaged 6 months ago, 36 years after I should have asked her the first time. Small ceremony, Rita said. Just family and a few close friends. We're thinking of having it right here on the beach. Perfect, Bethany said. You both deserve all the happiness in the world. As the sun disappeared into the Gulf of Mexico, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting everything you were meant to have in the first place. Marlene had spent 32 years stealing my life, one lie at a time. But in the end, her deception had given me something she never intended. It had given me back the woman I was supposed to spend my life with. The power grid of my life had finally been restored, and all the warning lights had turned green.